Okay.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this training for the League of Women Voters of Michigan's presentation on resisting disinformation. Please note that there is a great deal of information and many helpful guides on this topic. This presentation in particular is geared to people who are looking for a practical introduction. So once you are giving this presentation, you may encounter audience members with different approaches and more in-depth knowledge. It's fine for them to share additional resources once you have provided this practical introduction. So I will do the presentation from start to finish. And then while I'm doing that, please put your questions in the chat and we'll address those afterwards. So thank you very much. And please be patient with me while I get the screen share and all that started. Might have to share my screen before I start the presentation. Okay. Okay. Go. Okay. All right. Are you able to see the right screen, or are you seeing the wrong one with all the stuff on it?
We're seeing just the slides, so it's good.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. Okay. So first slide. Welcome. I'm Denise Hartsough of the League of Women Voters. Thanks for being here today to learn tips for resisting disinformation. We will go over what dis and misinformation are, why people spread disinformation, how disinformation works, why it sticks, when to respond, and how to respond. What is the difference between misinformation and disinformation? Both have to do with false or misleading information. You can think of disinformation as coming from the producers. They create and spread false information. Misinformation is when people share that disinformation, not knowing it is false. So it is the difference between producers and sharers. Why produce false or misleading information? It is important to consider possible purposes because pointing out the motivation is key to debunking disinformation. Some disinformation is designed to help someone retain or gain political power. Some disinformation is spread by pranksters who thrive on attention or enjoy chaos. Some disinformation generates revenue by gaining likes or shares or by promoting sales. Why share disinformation? We may share to affirm our affiliation or identity. False or misleading information comes in many forms. Here you see 7 types along a continuum of intent to cause harm, running from low at the left to high at the right. At the low end, a satirist likely does not mean to cause harm. However, someone who misses the satire may unintentionally cause harm by sharing the satire as genuine. We will talk in more detail in a minute about the next 3 types: false connection, misleading content, and false context. Imposter content is when the creator pretends to be a source they are not. Manipulated content brings to mind the slowed down video of Nancy Pelosi that made her seem drunk. At the far end of the continuum is wholesale creation of false content. Here are some of the tactics used to produce the 3 types of disinformation that lay more in the middle of the continuum: false connection, misleading content, and false context. A false connection can be created through a leading argument or logical fallacy. The graphic shows a logical fallacy. Just because 2 and 1 are both numbers does not mean 2 equals 1. False context can be achieved with outdated information or just a lack of context altogether. Misleading content could be half-truths, biased narratives, conspiracies, or appeals to hatred or stereotypes. Before we proceed, please be warned that the next few slides are real examples of online messages with problematic content. As you look at and think about each example, please keep in mind that they risk misleading you right now. As we go through the examples, think critically to understand how and why they are misleading. Messages with missing or false context are widespread. The missing context turns something true into something misleading. This message says, illegal aliens are far more likely to commit federal crimes based on statistics. It states non-citizens are 7% of the population, yet they commit 22% of murders. These statistics are accurate for the year they were shared and are backed up by government data. Missing context, however, makes this post misleading. It gives data only for federal crimes. These types of charges are rarely prosecuted at the federal level. If we look at criminal prosecutions at all levels of government, non-citizens are a much smaller percentage of the total for the listed crimes. Without context, statements like this can be both true and exceptionally misleading. Faulty logic or logical fallacies usually come in the form of an argument that jumps to a wrong conclusion. In this case, we see a meme that uses a false equivalence argument to question the legitimacy of mail-in voting. It suggests that mail-in voting is the same as self-certifying that you have been vaccinated. It is illogical to compare the two, but this message exploits potential skepticism with one to critique the other. Other common logical fallacies are a red herring or a straw man argument. They misdirect your attention away from a real problem to an invented one. Break down the arguments you see. Consider the substance of the argument and the motivation of the speaker. Then take a step back and consider whether the underlying premise is valid. This viral meme doesn't use any overtly derogatory language, but it implies that white people from Alabama, or the Deep South in general, are uneducated and backwards. References to stereotypes and attacks on specific populations may be overt or subtle. When they are subtle, we call them dog whistles. This is a reference to whistles that dogs can hear, but humans cannot. A hateful message is conveyed in a covert manner. Pay careful attention to messages that refer to specific identities. See if they invoke stereotypes. If you see a claim that a situation is the result of decisions by powerful people with ulterior motives, that is the sign of a conspiracy theory. Often it is the more outlandish conspiracy theories that are highly publicized, but many mundane conspiracy theories also circulate. They blame politicians, organizations, and powerful individuals for every kind of problem society faces. When you see mention of specific powerful people in connection with world domination or other sinister activities, exercise skepticism. We are most likely to believe disinformation when it fits our existing biases or plays to our fears. Disinformation usually appeals to emotions. If we are riled up, we are more likely to respond or share online, which is often the goal of those who post such material. Disinformation provides easy answers to complicated problems. It can be reassuring to find a simple explanation for a complex, nuanced situation. It can be easier to consider something all good or all bad rather than allow it to be ambiguous or unresolved in our mind. No matter if something is true or false, the more we hear or see it, the more we think it must be true. Next, we'll go into a bit more about how misinformation is so sticky. We are predisposed to believe ideas that align with our political beliefs, social values, and attitudes about people and organizations. Our biases condition us to rationalize or ignore things that don't align with our views. We have to keep in mind that just because we want something to be true doesn't mean it is. Misleading messages may make us angry, fearful, happy, or proud. When a message triggers a strong emotional response, take a step back and consider why the message makes us feel that way. and if those emotions are clouding our critical thinking. Many misleading messages rely on easy answers to get you to jump straight to a particular conclusion. Whether it is about an investment opportunity or disinformation, the same advice applies. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. When you encounter disinformation, the default action is not to engage. As we noted at the beginning, engagement can serve the purposes of those purveying the disinformation, giving them power or attention or earning them profits. And remember, the more something is repeated, the more it seems true, even when we repeat something to say that it is false. There are some situations when you may want to respond to disinformation. When communicating online with one other individual or in a small, closed group, or when interacting in person with another individual. In those cases, you will want to draw on the techniques of structured conversations and counter messaging. A reminder before we talk about responding to disinformation. It is crucial not to respond online by sharing, commenting on, or clicking a reaction to disinformation. Online interaction boosts the reach of a piece of disinformation. The last thing you want to do is help more people see something they wouldn't have seen otherwise as you try to squash or debunk it. When you are in a situation to engage with someone about disinformation, here are some suggestions about what not to do. Don't argue. People usually respond with defensiveness. As they defend the disinformation, the more they tend to believe the disinformation. When it is appropriate to engage with someone, don't use the language of the people who created the disinformation. Using the terminology of disinformers helps to normalize the misleading and harmful ideas. When interacting, show respect and caring. Embarrassing or ridiculing a person will make them feel badly about themselves and cause them to resent you. Those negative feelings will not move them away from a belief in disinformation. Fact-checking is a valuable and needed tool for countering disinformation. By itself, however, it may backfire. It may strike someone as condescending to be told, "No, I have the truth, you've been fooled." Or a fact check may reinforce the person's belief in the disinformation. Much disinformation includes skepticism of the institutions that offer fact checking. If someone already mistrusts academia or the mainstream media, for example, a fact check from a professor or a major news outlet may feel like confirmation of their mistrust in such institutions. Okay, so how does one respond effectively to disinformation? Remember that this is for when you are communicating online with one other individual or online in a small closed group or interacting in person with another individual. In those cases, use a structured conversation. First, listen with empathy. This means not thinking about a response, but listening without interruption to understand the person's feelings and what they have lived through. Second, affirm the pertinent values you two or your small group have in common. Next, briefly describe what may motivate the spread of disinformation: politics, pranks, profit. Share why you feel as you do about the disinformation. Be honest and vulnerable about your feelings and values. Then offer a truth sandwich, which we'll go into next. Finally, affirm your relationship, even if the two of you still hold widely divergent viewpoints. Counter messaging works well when we provide a truth sandwich, one not filled with facts, but with values. We start at the top of the sandwich. First, make a statement about the general topic and our shared values. For example, we all want secure and accurate elections. Then, without repeating the disinformation, state who is spreading it about this topic and why. For example, people seeking political power try to divide us by attacking our election process. Then for the bottom of the sandwich, state a positive vision for the future with regard to the topic. In our example, the security of our election process makes me optimistic about the future of our democracy. To learn more, here are key sources for this presentation. They offer guidance and more information. And special thanks to the Algorithmic Transparency Institute and Progress Michigan. I hope this presentation has helped you feel more prepared to identify disinformation, to understand why it's not a good to share it, and to know when and how to respond. Thank you for listening. Okay. Oh, I have a little bit more to say. So that was the end of the presentation. This is the full version. It's 23 slides. There is also a core version that has 10 slides, and there's a script for each version. And so obviously you pick the version that works for the amount of time that you have. And I believe, Paula, that we'll be able to offer the PowerPoints and the scripts in the LWV only part of our website.
Yes, it'll be there tomorrow, along with the form to fill out when you are reporting what event you had. Do you want to talk about the grant funding, Denise?
No, go ahead.
So we received the money that we got to give to you is called a Democracy Truth Grant, and it's from LWVUS, who is very concerned about spreading good information among the public. So that's why we're doing this. So the first, I'm sorry, damn dogs barking. The first presentation that we get, that you give, will be, you will get $400, and the next presentation will be, you'll receive $100. So it's a max of 500. These presentations can be given anytime between now and April 30th of next year. So you don't necessarily have to cram them all in before the election, but they certainly would be pertinent to what we're all seeing everywhere these days.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to offer is that I think many of you have received a very nice sort of purple handout from LWVUS. It's do's and don'ts of election disinformation. I think it's in English on one side and Spanish on the other. Do some people have that? Have you seen that? Yeah. Okay. We do have, I think those might be good things to hand out at an event if you're in person. And we do have some at the LWVMI office. And then I think Paula said she has somewhat of a supply of them too. So we could offer to send out some paper copies depending on how many you need and when. So we can do that. So Christina, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. What's your recommended audience? I know we did this before and it was suggested that we get out to the public as well as members.
Yes, I totally think the public is a great audience. I was trying to funnel information thinking like not the most passionate, interested person, but just somebody who maybe had a passing familiarity and wanted to know a little bit more, something real practical. So yeah, to the public would be great.
Is it something that we could post to our website for people to, and we could direct them to it?
I think if you can do a PDF version so that they couldn't take it and manipulate it, I think that would be all right. I don't know, Paula, does that seem okay with you?
Well, I don't know. We'll have to talk about that because we can send it out as a PDF too. But the grant money is going to be for presentations.
Ah, okay.
So if you want to post it on your website eventually, Denise and I will talk about that, but I think to get the funding, you would need to present it to an audience.
Well, basically, you're talking about 2 presentations then with a maximum of $500. But if we generate interest between now and the election, which is probably an appropriate time directing people to our website to further review it might be beneficial long-term.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against it. We can talk about it. I don't think there's the one tricky thing is, like the two sources that are credited at the end, they are the major sources of the information, the graphics, a lot of stuff in there. It's not like I dreamt all this up myself or, did original research to generate it. So we have to be a little bit careful not to claim authorship of other people's material. So I don't know if there's any trickiness about that, but I did take a lot of it from like what you alluded to, Christina, back it was like a year or two ago when we were trained, and then we went out and did the presentations. So as long as we're not infringing on copyright of anybody's stuff.
Yeah, that's not an issue. Just tell us not to.
Well, maybe we'll find out. Maybe we'll inquire with LWVUS and make sure we're not going to mess up anything.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So, Sarah, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do. Going back to, I think it was the structured conversations slide, number 6 was affirm your relationship. And I mean, I just kind of took that to be, you're going to agree to disagree. Because I'm not quite sure. I'm of the belief that I'm not going to change anybody's mind, just like they're not going to change mine. So, I mean, we can do what we can to give do the true sandwich, but in the end, what does affirm your relationship mean? You're talking about a family member,
Right.
you want to maintain that relationship, right?
Yeah. I mean, the whole point of the structured conversation is that it's happening with people with whom you do have some kind of relationship, whether it's family or friend or professional or whatever, but there's something ongoing, between the two parties, and that it is important that the relationship not be, destroyed by a heated conversation about mis and disinformation. So, yeah. Should we start looking at some of the questions in the?
Yeah, why don't I read them off to
Yeah,
you?
that'd be great. Thank you.
Christine Gebhardt says, I haven't seen the document you're referring to, where to locate it. And I think this is what you were talking about, right, Denise? So
Yeah.
we'll put this on the LWV only page in this misinformation section. It is really a nice handout to give at a presentation.
Right. And I put the link in the chat just above your question, Christine. So if you want to just click that link, it should take you to the document on the LWVUS site.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Judy Florian asks, do you request presentations be made to specific groups?
I mean, I guess I think it's a great idea. It seems like if there are existing groups, whether it's in a retirement center, at a school, at a church, a civic group, like it seems like that's when these presentations often work the best, is when there's a group that's already meeting because they meet and they're a group and they invite outside speakers to come in and address them on various topics that are of interest to them. And I would think that almost any, civic educational type group in your community would be interested in this topic. This is highly pertinent. Then just witness all the, there's just like a flood of resources out there out in the atmosphere around us right now. So I think everybody's looking at this and caring about it.
Faith asks, would it be a good idea to include something about what credible sources there are for information about voting and possible news sources?
It may be that it's on the, well, maybe it's not on there. I don't necessarily want to do that. I think it'd be fine to share that, when you're talking to people, because we do have another great little presentation that Paula put together about what 7 things you can do to get out the vote or be part of helping with, being a good citizen around the election. And that does have some great lists in it of places like the ACLU and Promote the Vote and the Secretary of State and all that. So maybe we could do just like a little handout that we could just stick in the amongst the materials, Paula, that would have just that last of your slides, or a couple of your slides that have the information on them.
Sure, sure.
So you could kind of have it at hand. I don't necessarily want to put it in this because this isn't just about voting. This is about this topic in general. So
Karen Baker says a good parting thought or takeaway in conversation is, I hope our discussion gives you a different perspective on the topic.
there you go. That's a good close. Yeah.
Christina's still looking for the link, so we'll get that for you, Christine. And you've got 2 people with hands raised.
Go for it, Christina.
Thank you. Karen Baker is our communications committee chair, and she helped put together a brochure that we hand out at all of our events that gives a list of fact check sites, including ones that our high school students are more familiar with. And it wasn't something that we originated, like anything in league. It's not, I mean, you just add on to it. So National started it, Grand Rapids worked on it, Marquette worked on it, and we added it. And we've been doing that, and it's on our website. So I invite you all to check out this Disinformation brochure, because those the fact check sites have all been vetted. So we encourage you to use that and don't try to reinvent the wheel.
Right. Yeah, thanks. Just when I was poking around today for some stuff, I stumbled onto the League of Women Voters of California website. Has a fantastic array of resources on this topic. So yeah, make use of all the existing materials that are out there. It's really helpful. So Peggy, you have a comment or a question? Oh, can you unmute yourself, please? There we go. Yeah. Oh, it went on mute again. There. Oh no, it keeps popping. Try again. See if you can. Oh man. If it's really.
How's there?
Yay!
There
It worked.
I
Okay.
got it. Okay. Regarding reliable sources of information, I'm careful about recommending any specific publication and just pointing out to people that even publications of long standing that have a good reputation for being unbiased and careful in reporting, they also have examples of hasty reporting and reporting that is unsupported. It kind of depends on the journalist and sometimes on what their deadline is, but you have to look at everything with a critical eye. But certainly with a publication that has a good reputation over a long period of time, they do have some standing. But you just have to bear in mind that you have to apply those tools of logic. The fact-checking sites are terrific. But also in terms of what you see in a paper, I've seen with major newspapers have a headline that is completely misleading to what the content is. So I really usually don't endorse any particular publication, but I just ask people to really use those critical thinking skills that we talked about.
Yeah, great. Thanks for your comment. All right. Anybody else have a comment or a question?
Christina is asking, is there a grant application? The grant application is really just a Google form that will be on the website where we're asking you to tell us about the event that you had. So it's not necessarily an application, because we are putting these slides and the script and the handout on our LWV only page. Does
Right.
everybody remember what the password is?
No. Okay.
So this will be posted after my 10 o'clock meeting tomorrow.
A typo while I was reading through the script. So yeah, a little bit of tweaking is still needed.
And Barbara asks, I can't remember the attorney's name but he gave examples of disinformation sites that are working to discredit the election. I like giving examples of disinfo to help compare and contrast with credible sites. This whole world is so subtle and challenging to navigate, that's for sure. I
Mhm.
imagine for a politically unengaged person, it is a real effort to be able to discern, a quickly deteriorating skill these days.
Yeah, I think that, yes, examples are good, and there are some examples in the long version. There's not so many in the short version of the presentation because we're just trying to focus on the key concepts. But as Peggy was saying, it can be a little tricky making a recommendation of saying, well, here's the credible source and here's the not credible source. So I think I was trying to stick mostly just to, the principles of the thing, the definitions, and helping people have some understanding that they could then hopefully go out and apply. Shelley, did you want to make a comment or ask a question?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the first comment I have is that if you are trying to debunk a piece of information, do not share that piece of information. If you know how to make a screenshot of, say, a tweet or an Instagram post or whatever, if you know how to make a screen share shot, then you can share that and it doesn't get magnified. But if you share the actual post, it's a disaster because it just amplifies the misinformation. And anybody who wants to more information about that, I invite them to just please contact me. And this, I had a second point, and I'm trying to think of what you were saying, and I just lost my train of thought for the second point. But it is definitely important not to share misinformation or disinformation by just reposting and saying, oh, this is hokum, this is bunkum or whatever, because if you repost the actual post, it just magnifies its reach.
Yeah, I think from what I've been reading, even taking a screenshot and posting that would not be a good idea unless you were just sharing it with a very small circle of friends.
Oh, yeah.
Because just even having something visible, even if you're saying like, don't believe this, it's putting it out there again. And they're saying like the more
Right.
something is out, the more believable it seems, even if it's got all around it saying like, this is false, this is false. It's, people just tend to glom onto, what jumps out at them. And like in the presentation, there's just so many things, like whether it's an emotional appeal or if it fits our worldview or, for whatever reason, that's what's going to stick with somebody as opposed to, us saying like, don't believe this. So I would just be really cautious, not to repeat the stuff that's not accurate. So,
And Trish Williams made a comment in the chat about a bias rating site. And I can't figure out if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Trish, if you're on the call, can you explain that? Where is she?
right now there you go.
Okay, there you go. What it is it just gives, I'm going to bring it back up again. So it has media bias of people of like CNN, MSNBC, it's considered left. In the central, they have BBC, Bloomberg, NPR, USA Today, Wall Street Journal. On the right, they have Fox News, the Federalist, National Review. It just gives a source to let you know the bias that you might be reading from those news sources.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've talked to people and asked them where they got information, and then you have this to look and say, well, perhaps this is a very far left view or a very far right view. Let's look at NPR or something and say, what do they say about it? I don't know if you can agree on your source of information.
Yeah, I think it's tricky because, yeah, some people think NPR is way left wing. So,
Yeah.
I have seen it, and it is a helpful tool. I think it would just depend a lot on the particular person you were engaging with, whether that would be useful or not. You would just have to evaluate that, whether you thought that it would make any difference whatsoever to help the person see where along that spectrum a particular news source falls. But yeah, it's a good thing to point out to people as a resource. So thank you for pointing that out. Shelley, did you want to follow up with something?
Yeah, Barbara's mention of media bias chart. I think actually that they are very good, but most people, like whenever I've referred people to it, they're like, "Oh, it's too confusing" or whatever. So, but I do think that they are very good in saying this is a right-wing source, or this is a left-wing, or this is moderate.
Mhm.
And the second thing is that reminded me of my second point, which was that PolitiFact, which is a source that I have recommended often. I post on our Facebook page, I say, check your facts and go to PolitiFact. And I've discovered that they are not always reliable. And that was really upsetting to me because I had always thought that they were quite unbiased and and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just saying that everything, it's such a lot of work, and I personally just wonder how people who aren't sort of a little bit nerdy about this, they just, it's just beyond them, so we have to be thinking about what's an easy way to tell people this is where you can go look, or this is how you can think about it, or whatever. And I don't have answers to those questions, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think the thing that was very surprising to me, and something that I hope that we can stress when we're doing these presentations, is the thing that it's not all about facts. It's not about logic or rationality. It's a lot about feelings and values. And so, that's why I think they're saying, like, if you're going to respond at all, if you're going to try and deal with it at all, make sure it's within a relationship and you can have common values as a touchstone. Because otherwise you're just going to be amplifying something that's not right, and it probably won't make a difference. So anyway, that was a big lesson that I took from my engagement with this material. Christina, go for it.
Thank you. Kathy Poor, when she was on the state board as communications director, put together an excellent guideline for communications. And Paula, or Denise, I was wondering, when you post the script, if you could also add the section that she and her committee produced on mis and disinformation, because it was pretty darn good and way ahead of the curve, actually. So it's a good source of information. If you could just add that segment to it, that would be good.
It'll be up to our webmaster, who is not me. But thank you for the suggestion. Deborah.
I'm going to confess, I don't know how many of you have ever been in Facebook jail, but I have innocently found myself there. But one thing I will do, and there are some people that I know who just put awful stuff up. And the little 3 dots on Facebook where it says you can report something, and you go through, you keep clicking, it'll say, what is it? Is it offensive? Is it, of sexual nature, whatever? And I have done that, and I'm not spreading the what she posted, but I do know that they have gone in and it's sometimes contacted her and said, this has been removed for false information. I don't know. I don't understand algorithms, and I don't know how often they do it, because again, I have shared something that I thought was just, pretty ludicrous. Most of my family, it's all about cats, but we've been banned. We've been thrown in Facebook jail at certain times. So that might be that might be an option.
Okay, so you're talking about someone you reported.
I know this person who's on my friend list who has a habit of just putting absolutely ludicrous, ugly. Some of it's ugly. Most of it I can just ignore, and I don't even I pass it. I don't acknowledge it for the most part. But every once in a blue moon, she's got something that's really out there that I'm like, no, this can't go further, you know. And particularly if it talks about any of the young. You know, there was a lot of misinformation about Hillary Clinton and whatever, some kind of an underworld drug ring or something. Yeah. So, I mean, and this person has no problem posting this stuff. I mean, and then I notice sometimes somebody will enter in and say to her, oh, come on. And she'll say, oh, I'm just reposting this. I'm just reposting this. But I have turned her in because I thought, hey, I got in for doing nothing really, but you know, we'll see if it works.
Okay, well, thank you for that interesting suggestion. Dawn.
Good evening, everybody. Mine's real quick. I was sitting here thinking about the audiences that we might present this to. And we all know that people are so far in their corners right now. I think there's a very few that will probably listen. But I thought, what about schools? Like, it seems like if we could get in with the youth in high school, or
that's a good idea.
even if we can't do it now, but if we can do it after January, you know, after the election, if we can't get in, I'm just thinking it's the students that we can maybe start to teach this stuff to, who aren't so entrenched in their beliefs and their views. They're the ones that are the future. And if they start to learn about this stuff, it might be helpful. So that I just wanted to throw that out there as an idea. If anybody has contacts and can do that.
I think there is at least somewhat of an effort to have media literacy be taught. And so if there were a media literacy class, I would think that it would already be addressing some of this. And so who knows, maybe someone would be open to looking at it. I don't know. I'm not sure about the particulars of each community's schools, or maybe you'd have to try and reach youth more through like, you know, out of school time offerings, organizations, or programs, you know, where you could reach young people without it necessarily being going through the schools.
Yeah, like I'm a member of Rotary, and I'm glad you said that because they have a high school club.
Yeah.
You know, it's affiliated with the Rotary Club. So that's a good idea. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Shirley.
Well, as a retired school teacher and school counselor, I would think that the schools would be very, very careful about allowing any organizations in.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you allow one organization, you then open the door to many others, and parents are going to have an absolute fit.
Yeah.
But as far as being able to talk to kids, they're obviously much more open-minded than adults are. I have found out now that I'm in my 70s that people who I knew back when they were in their 30s and 40s were very open-minded, and they just get more and more conservative as they age. So the kids are the ones to talk to, but I don't know how we're going to do that.
Yep. I don't know. Try Boys and Girls Club or the YWCA or whatever. I don't know. Christine.
Yeah, I was going to mention local community colleges. I think if you get into, you know, government classes, policy classes, I mean, we do voter registration at our community college, and they've asked us to come in to present to some of their classes. So I think this would be a really good presentation for that audience.
Great. Thanks for that suggestion. Do other people have thoughts about types of groups or venues or whatever that would make sense? Or any other?
Lost the screen.
Debbie?
Where'd the screen go?
We, of course, we started with the young. We're working with the young right now, and that would be middle school, what I say, 6th through 8th grade. Linda Ferguson and I last spring taught over 200 students a 6-week, 15-minute class on My Democracy, My Vote. And we took them, we walked in real briefly, walked in with 4 stuffed animals, said, vote for your favorite animal. They did. We walked out. They had no idea why they voted for these animals or if they'd ever see them again. Came back the next week, explained that they were part of a democracy. Did they know the difference between monarchy and so forth? Through the 6 weeks, we registered them to vote. We showed them the real form. We talked to them about campaigning and how to be kind and what not to not use the media, to research. If they were going to say something, they were going to have to pick one of those animals and define the positive things, not to say negative things, look for positive things. And at the end of the 6 weeks, they actually voted, and each class voted for their mascot. And we left them with the stuffed animal. And we got very positive feedback on that. Now, what we had to do was we had 6 modules. Everybody had a module to work on. We got together, we met, we cut it apart, we put it back together. We took it to the superintendent and the high school principal to get their approval. And if they needed somebody outside and beyond, we were more than ready. We made it very clear who we were and how we were nonpartisan, explained that. And they want us back. And now we have some local organizations. We're gonna approach the Girl Scouts. We're looking at, even 4-H even has a program that we want to look at that's for older, getting in toward the high school, a leadership type thing. So, it's just, we'll go anywhere. We'll do, but it's a 6-week, 15 minutes. That's it. You're in and out.
Yeah, great. Well, this won't take that long.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying it is, as long as you have something to present to them.
Yeah.
And we timed it, we timed it and everything so that they knew, because they had to figure the slots in for the teaching class, how many minutes we were going to be in there.
Right. Thanks, Deborah. Peggy, did you want to say something else? Try to unmute again, see if this will work. There we go.
I'm just delighted to hear about Deborah's project. We presented for 45 minutes to a number of high schools, and we had gone through kind of a drought where the high schools weren't asking us in, but then we just did a reach out with local university, and they wanted us. We had good sessions. Sometimes the time was a little tricky, but they definitely wanted us. The fact that we were nonpartisan and we were basically teaching the kids about voting issues, they really were positive about that. And they're asking us, when do we want to start up again? And they just asked for, like, in one of our townships, they asked for 300 voter guides to work with their seniors, which I was really struck by, because that hasn't happened in the past. So don't rule out those schools. They will let you in once they're convinced you're nonpartisan and it's information that's going to be really useful.
Yeah, so it probably varies quite a bit from district to district. Paula.
Hi, 2 things. And exactly what you said, Denise, from district to district. I know Sarah Wirtz is on this call. Not sure if anybody else from Detroit is on, but Detroit had a months-long process to get into Detroit high schools. All kinds of insurance upgrades, background checks. It was just crazy. That said, they're in now and they're doing good things. But I also wanted to mention, and somebody said, I think Deborah said something about the Girl Scouts. LWVUS has partnered with the Girl Scouts of America now. So that would be an excellent place to give this presentation. You might have to simplify the language a little bit, but that would be interesting to meet with a Girl Scout troop, and they might, if they know about the partnership, hopefully they'd be receptive to having the league in.
And the Boy Scouts, so we're not biased.
And the Boy Scouts.
I think they changed their name even, Boy Scouts. It's like, yeah, anyway. That lots of options. So I see Barbara put some great suggestions in the chat about different groups to reach out to, unions, the Scouts, Newcomers Club, libraries, La Leche League, support groups. That sounds great. And I think you could contact Deborah. Deborah, you want to put your email in the chat so that people can reach out to you to find out information about your program in Jackson? If you can, that would be great. All right. Any other questions or comments? We probably should wrap up soon so we don't keep you from your other activities. Anything else? I really appreciate everybody participating and all the good questions and suggestions. It's really wonderful to see all the enthusiasm and hope that you all get out there and make at least 2 presentations, and feel free not to limit yourself to 2, go for it if you can do more. I think people will be interested, especially that it's geared for like a beginner level. So you don't have to have specialized knowledge to appreciate it. So if we're good to go, Paula, should we say good night? Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.